There comes a moment in every life when the mask slips, when the quiet echo behind your thoughts becomes too loud to ignore, when the smile cracks and reveals the ache behind your eyes. That ache is not sadness, it's not failure, it's not weakness. It is the weight of a truth that has been buried alive inside you. And its name is addiction, but not the kind the world wants to talk about. Not just the needles, not just the bottles, not just the pills. No, the addiction to pretending, the addiction to being numb, the addiction to hiding in comfort, in performance, in distraction, in survival, the addiction to who you've become, just to be accepted by a world that doesn't even know your name. And before you can escape it, you have to see it. With clarity so raw, it cuts through the illusions. With a gaze so honest, it pierces the soul. Because this isn't about substances. This is about the soul's slow starvation. This is about the false self feeding on your potential like a parasite. And the only cure is truth. Painful truth. The kind of truth that doesn't make you feel good but sets you free. Here is the first one. You're not addicted to the substance, you're addicted to the escape. What you reach for when no one's watching reveals more about you than any mask you wear in public. That drink isn't just a drink. That scroll isn't just a scroll. That hit, that click, that binge, it's a portal. A door to a temporary world where you can disappear. You're not chasing pleasure, you're chasing oblivion. Because somewhere along the way, life became too much. Your body became a battlefield. Your mind became a prison. And the silence became unbearable. So you found a way to vanish without leaving the room. But here's the truth. Every time you escape, you abandon yourself. You reinforce the belief that your real, unfiltered self is unworthy of peace. You deepen the grooves of a false identity, carved by trauma, by rejection, by generational wounds passed down like heirlooms. The addiction isn't chemical, it's spiritual. It's the soul crying out for reunion with itself. And the longer you run, the louder that cry becomes. 2, you think you're in control, but it's already controlling you. Addiction is the ultimate puppeteer. It whispers that you're the one pulling the strings, while it wraps invisible chains around your decisions. Just one more time, it says. You deserve this, it purrs. You can stop anytime, but it lies. Beautifully, persuasively, masterfully, because it doesn't want you dead, it wants you obedient. It wants you halfway alive, numb enough not to revolt, functional enough to perform, distracted enough to forget. It wants you docile, tamed, predictable. And so you become a ghost haunting your own life, going through the motions, smiling with dead eyes, achieving on the outside, collapsing on the inside. The most terrifying part, society rewards it. It calls your addiction coping. It calls your disassociation strength. It calls your silence maturity. And as long as you keep producing, performing, and pretending no one will ask what it's costing your soul. But deep down, you know what you've lost. You feel it in the emptiness after the high wears off. You see it in the eyes of those you've pushed away. You hear it in the quiet moments when the truth breaks through the noise. You're not free. Not yet. 3, you can't heal what you keep defending. There is a lie we tell ourselves to survive. A lie so seductive, so socially acceptable, that it becomes a belief system. This is just who I am. But it isn't. That's not you. That's your wound. That's your pattern. That's your adaptation. That's the mask you built to protect the child inside who didn't feel safe to be seen. Addiction isn't just about seeking pleasure. It's about protecting pain, shielding trauma, guarding the tender parts of your psyche that were never allowed to breathe. But as long as you defend the addiction, as long as you romanticize it, normalize it, justify it, you will stay stuck. Because healing demands ego death. It demands the collapse of the false self. You cannot heal and protect your dysfunction at the same time. You must choose. The truth? Most people don't want healing. They want relief. But healing is not relief. Healing is fire. It burns through illusions. It shatters facades. It demands that you sit in the very pain you've spent a lifetime escaping, and let it speak, not to punish you, but to reveal you. Because underneath the addiction, underneath the performance, underneath the fear, is someone ancient and holy and indestructible. Your true self is not damaged. It's buried, and it's waiting for your permission to rise. Sir, no one is coming to save you, and that's your greatest power. This is the final, brutal truth, the one that breaks you and rebuilds you. No one is coming. Not the parent who failed you, not the lover who betrayed you, not the friend who ghosted you, not the system that profits from your pain. No guru, no healer, no external savior can do the inner work for you. And the moment you accept this, the moment you stop outsourcing your healing, stop blaming, stop waiting, you reclaim your sovereignty. You take the throne back from your addiction, because here's the secret. The same mind that created the addiction holds the blueprint for your liberation. The same energy you've been using to destroy yourself can become the fuel to rebuild, but only if you stop bargaining, stop making excuses, stop living like a victim of your past, and start moving like the architect of your future. You must walk through the fire, not around it. You must confront the pain, not medicate it. You must die to the false self so the real one can be born. This is the alchemy of addiction, the sacred unraveling, the holy descent into shadow so you can rise not just sober, but awakened, not just clean, but transformed. And when you emerge, you will not be the same. You will be someone who remembers who they were before the world tamed them, before the trauma, before the conditioning, before the fear. You will not need to escape anymore because you will have returned home. The return to self is not gentle. It is not a soft breeze or a healing crystal or a quote you can screenshot on Instagram. It is war. War with the parts of you that benefited from your suffering. War with the habits that clothed your wounds in silence. War with the internal voice that told you healing was for other people, for the chosen, the lucky, the loved, not for you. But that voice is not yours. That voice is the echo of everyone who failed to see your light. It is the sound of the system that taught you your only value was in your productivity. It is the whisper of every unresolved wound, every inherited curse, every generational trauma that has been passed down like chains disguised as tradition. And you are the one chosen to break it, not through rebellion, through awakening. Because once you awaken, you cannot go back to sleep. Once you see the matrix, the illusion, the game, it can no longer own you. And in that clarity, you don't just free yourself, you become a threat to every structure that depended on your obedience. Addiction thrives in the unconscious, but you are becoming conscious. And it hurts, because when the numbness wears off, the pain comes roaring in. All the grief you buried, all the shame you swallowed, all the regret, the longing, the dreams you abandoned just to survive. But feel it, all of it. Feel it not to suffer, but to remember that you're still alive. Because pain is not your enemy. Pain is the compass. It points to the place where the healing must begin, where the soul got stuck, where the child first learned to hide. Do not turn away. Do not retreat back into the arms of addiction because the truth stings. Let the sting become your sermon. Let the ache become your altar. Because on the other side of that pain is you, the real you. The one who doesn't need to impress or prove or hustle for love. The one who is not a brand or a role or a survival mechanism. The one who is wild, sacred, whole. And here's what they never told you. You don't need fixing. You need remembering, because a soul does not break, it forgets. And addiction is the amnesia. It's the fog that keeps you chasing ghosts. It's the loop that traps you in cycles of seeking, grasping, devouring, but never arriving, never landing, never resting. Because if you were to stop, if you were to sit with yourself sober and still, the memories would flood back, the truths would rise, and the false life would collapse. That's why you keep running. not from the addiction, but from the awakening. But you can only run for so long. Eventually, the soul demands your return. And when that day comes, when you choose to walk into the fire instead of away from it, everything changes. You stop craving escape and start craving depth. You stop idolizing the surface and begin seeking the sacred. You no longer want more, you want real connection, real presence, real freedom. Not the kind you can buy, not the kind that comes in a bottle or a pill or a curated identity. The kind that comes from owning your story, facing your shadow, forgiving yourself. This is the power of truth, the kind of truth that doesn't coddle but cleanses, the kind that doesn't whisper sweet nothings but roars like a revolution in your blood. And it is waiting for you, it always has been. Because even in your darkest hour, even in your most self-destructive spiral, even when you betrayed every part of yourself, something holy survived. A flicker, a voice, a presence, call it soul, call it God, call it instinct. But know this, it never gave up on you. Not when you overdosed, not when you lied, not when you lost everything, not when you hated yourself. It stayed, watching, waiting, whispering. Remember who you are. And now you are. You are not your addiction. You are not your past. You are not your worst moment or your weakest choice or your biggest regret. You are the awareness behind it all. You are the fire that cannot be extinguished. You are the storm and the silence after. And now it is time to rise. Rise not as the person they remember, but as the person you were born to become. Not the mask you wore to survive, not the identity you stitched together from approval, fear, and expectation, but the raw, untamed force of truth that was buried beneath it all. This is not a return to innocence. This is not about becoming clean or polished or perfect. No, this is about becoming whole. Wholeness is not purity. Wholeness is integration. It is taking every broken shard of your story, the trauma, the mistakes, the shame, and welding it back into power, into sovereignty, into sacred rebellion. Because every relapse, every failure, every night you wept on the bathroom floor was not a detour, it was the curriculum. And now you speak the language of pain fluently. You know what it means to be lost. And that means you are ready to lead others home, but not as a savior, as a mirror. Because the world doesn't need more saints, it needs more real ones, warriors who've been to hell and brought back the blueprint. You are becoming that. But understand this, the world will try to seduce you back into silence, back into the roles, the patterns, the pretty prison of your old self. It will offer you distraction dressed as peace, numbness dressed as freedom, escape dressed as joy. You must refuse. Refuse to betray your healing just to fit in. Refuse to anesthetize your soul just to be liked. Refuse to shrink so others don't feel threatened by your fire. Because if your light offends the blind, let them squint. This is your life, your story, your miracle. And no high, no approval, no external validation is worth more than that. You have walked through the fire, you have sat in the ashes, you have stared your demons in the eye and said, not today. You have died and yet you rise. So walk like it, speak like it, decide like it. Do not tiptoe through this life like a shadow of yourself. Do not apologize for your intensity, your hunger, your clarity, because the you who survived has earned the right to take up space. And don't you dare settle. Don't you dare settle for half-healed love, half-spoken dreams, half-lived truth. You were not born to be manageable. You were born to be magnificent. And addiction, that dark, cunning thief, was only ever a test. Not to see if you could survive, but to see if you would awaken. And now that you have, everything changes. You begin to notice the lies that once controlled you. You begin to reclaim the energy that once escaped you. You begin to radiate something no substance, no person, no approval can replace. Wholeness. And from that wholeness comes a power that cannot be bought, sold, or stolen. It is yours, inherent, Unshakable, it is the power to say, I will no longer abandon myself. Gum. It is the power to look addiction in the face and say, you do not get to write the rest of my story. It is the power to create a life so rich, so sacred, so vividly alive that you would rather face every storm than ever numb again. This is not just recovery. This is resurrection. You are no longer seeking freedom. You are becoming it. And those chains, they were never real. Only fear kept them in place. Only shame gave them weight. Only forgetting gave them power. But you remember now. And once you remember, you never forget again. You never forget the moment you stopped begging life to be softer and chose instead to become stronger. You never forget the moment you looked at the wreckage inside yourself, not with shame, but with reverence. You never forget the sacred defiance it takes to choose consciousness, day after day, even when the darkness calls your name like an old friend. Because, make no mistake, the darkness will come back. It doesn't vanish with a breakthrough. It waits. It lingers. It whispers in moments of weakness, in seasons of grief, in the empty spaces between growth spurts. It will always try to drag you back to the numbness, to the familiar, to the sleep. But now, you know, you've tasted the aliveness that comes from facing your pain. You've seen the light that emerges when you stop running. You've met the parts of yourself that the addiction tried to bury, and you refuse to let them die again. And so when the cravings come, when the mind says, just one more, when the world applauds your self-destruction because it keeps you digestible, you'll pause, you'll breathe, and you'll choose truth over comfort. Not because it's easy, but because it's sacred. Because every time you do, you dismantle centuries of conditioning. You become an anomaly, a soul too awake to be owned, a being too healed to be manipulated, a force too grounded to be broken. That is what they fear. Not your addiction, but your freedom. Because a free man cannot be controlled. A free woman cannot be silenced. A free soul cannot be sold. And that is the revolution. It starts with one person refusing to go back to sleep. One person saying, no more anesthesia, no more pretending, no more erasing myself to make others comfortable. One person choosing presence over escape. One person choosing depth over performance. One person choosing to feel it all and still rise. Because in a world addicted to illusion, the most radical act is to be real. So be real. Be terrifyingly, unapologetically real. Let them call it intense. Let them call it dramatic. Let them call it too much. Because the truth is, they're afraid of what you've become. Not because you're broken, but because you're finally whole. And wholeness is contagious. You will walk into rooms and trigger people simply by existing in your truth. You will lose friends who were only comfortable with your dysfunction. You will confuse lovers who mistook your past wounds for permanent weakness. You will shatter the mirrors others use to validate their own denial. And still you must walk. You must continue, not in bitterness, but in reverence. Because you are not here to be understood by everyone. You are here to be you, fully, fiercely, finally. Let the world adjust to you for once. Let it feel what it feels. Let it react how it reacts. But do not shrink. You didn't walk through hell to play small. You didn't bury your addictions just to become addicted to people's approval. You didn't return from the grave just to apologize for your light. No, you are here to burn with clarity, to burn with conviction, to burn with love so deep it scares the numbness out of others. That is your medicine now, not the bottle, not the needle, not the binge. You, your truth, your voice, your unshakable presence. That is what the addiction tried to hide, because it knew that once you met yourself, the war was over. And now you have, so let them wonder, let them gossip, let them doubt. You have nothing left to prove, because the final stage of healing is embodiment. It's not about explaining yourself, it's about becoming the living proof. You walk differently now. Not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because you carry the weight of every version of you that almost didn't make it. You are the prayer they whispered in the dark. You are the miracle they bled for. You are the answer they never saw coming. So don't look back. Let the past mourn your departure. Let the addiction wither from lack of attention. Let the old self dissolve, not with regret, but with gratitude, because it served its purpose. It kept you alive long enough for this moment, this clarity, this breath, this rise. And now you go forward, not as a survivor, not even as a fighter, but as a creator, the creator of a new story, one written not in scars, but in sovereignty, one built not on trauma, but on truth, one forged not in fear, but in fire. Your fire, still burning, still rising, still remembering who the hell you are. And no, there is nothing left to run from, nothing left to suppress, no one left to impress. You've faced the monster. You've looked in the mirror and didn't flinch. You walked through hell and came back carrying the light. Not someone else's light, not a borrowed belief, not society's approval, not a religious promise, but your own raw, unfiltered, feral truth, awakened from deep within. Now, you are no longer a victim of anything, no longer a child waiting to be saved, no longer a soul begging for scraps of love to fill the void. You've remembered who you were before the world tamed you. Before the name, the role, the gender, the circumstance were stamped on you like labels. Now, you are you, whole. No permission needed, no apology required, no perfection necessary, because it is in your imperfection that you are divine. It is through the cracks that the light got in. It is from the ruins that you built your own kingdom. You don't need to take a break from yourself anymore. You're no longer trying to escape reality, because now you are the reality. Full, fierce, present. No addiction can hold you when you've chosen yourself. No memory, no person, no pain can control you when you've looked it in the eye and said, I see you, I understand you, but you no longer own me. And from that moment on, you don't just live. You live consciously. You don't just exist. You illuminate, not to be seen, but to awaken those still asleep, because you are the living proof. Proof that addiction is not a life sentence, but a doorway. That suffering is not the end, but the call. The call to come back to yourself. And if you've heard that call, if you've chosen to rise, even with shaking hands, even with a broken heart, even with unfinished healing, then know this: you have already won, not over others, not over your past, but over forgetting. You remembered, and once you remember, nothing can ever make you forget again. You are no longer searching for freedom. You are freedom, and the world, even if it doesn't understand, will have no choice but to adjust to your light, because you no longer walk like an addict. You walk like yourself. Finally,